Hi, it's Katrina. Bear dogs. Amphicyon, better known as the bear dog, first appeared in Eurasia between 55 million and 23 million years ago. At this time, the Earth was much warmer and chock full of thick vegetation. True to their name, they looked like a small bear with the head of a dog. They had heavy bodies with flat feet like a bear, with long legs and long snout like a dog, so the name is perfect. They probably lived like today's bears do, feeding on meat, carrion, fish, and fruit. Its front legs were very strong, so as science author Bob Strauss says, it could probably stun its prey senseless with just one swipe. However, Amphicyon is not from the bear or dog family, but is classified in the dog-like suborder Caniformia, which includes foxes, wolves, bears, sea lions, and weasels. This makes the bear dog more like a cousin or a distant relative to both bears and dogs. This should not be confused with the Karelian bear dog that is around today. There were 9 species of bear dogs. One of them, Protocyon robustum, looked much like today's wolves, with long limbs that made them efficient runners. Others, including Amphicyon Longiramus, were stockier and more closely resembled modern bears. Bear dogs also came in a range of sizes, apparently growing larger as they evolved. Some weighed over 1,000 pounds, while others, particularly those early on in the creature's evolutionary line, were as small as a modern Chihuahua. As bear dogs grew larger, they moved higher up along the food chain and were able to take down bigger prey. But there were disadvantages to their increased size, including a higher food requirement and slower reproduction. Bear dogs went extinct between 5 and 10 million years ago, long before the earliest humans and domesticated dogs walked the earth. The dire wolf. The dire wolf existed in the Americas during the last ice age and is one of the most famous prehistoric carnivores. Between 125,000 and 10,000 years ago, early humans would have been able to hear their howls all over the place. Researchers have discovered their remains over a vast range, as far north as southern Alberta, Canada, and as far south as modern-day Bolivia, and in the U.S. from coast to coast. The biggest concentration of direwolf specimens to date comes from the La Brea tar pits in southern California. Direwolves were probably pack hunters like gray wolves today. Possessing high endurance and strong jaws, they probably hunted mid-sized herbivores like horses and bison. Some remains found in the tar pit show signs of serious injury that then healed, so they most likely took care of each other and brought each other food to help the injured survive. At 130 pounds on average, these ancient creatures were much larger and more muscular than the gray wolf, which weighs in at around 88 pounds. Direwolves and gray wolves lived alongside one another during the Pleistocene epoch, along with saber-toothed cats. Their size difference may not have been as noticeable as it sounds. It was more muscle than anything else. A big difference was their teeth. The direwolf had a very large first molar designed to give its teeth a superior shearing ability compared to the gray wolf. They could bite down with 129% more force. So did we have a relationship with them? The Clovis culture is a prehistoric Paleo-Indian culture living around 13,000 years ago. In 2011, paleontologists found evidence that the Clovis people may have begun the domestication process of the direwolf. A Clovis man was buried with his direwolf. There is still lots to learn, but it is an interesting idea to think that the direwolf may have worked alongside ancient humans and kept them company, even after death. Nobody knows why direwolves went extinct, and researchers have established that they were not related to modern domestic dogs. The gray wolf myth. Scientists have long considered domestic dogs to be direct descendants of gray wolves, but this thought process has been called into question several times in recent years. While it's true that dogs obviously must descend from at least one wild ancestor, their connection to wolves may be less direct or be more confusing than we previously thought. Researchers now believe that both gray wolves and dogs descended from a common wolf ancestor that went extinct sometime between 15,000 and 40,000 years ago. We still don't know how it is that humans and dogs came to form such a strong bond, and scientists don't truly know when this happened. A 2017 study suggests that it was between 20,000 and 40,000 years ago, earlier than previously thought. Another study concluded that modern dogs may have split genetically from wolves as recently as 14,000 years ago, and that they diverged into East Asian and Western Eurasian dogs sometime between then and 6,800 years ago. There's also controversy revolving around where humans first domesticated dogs. According to genetic studies, this could have happened in Europe, southern China, Mongolia, or perhaps somewhere else, or all at the same time. It's possible that wolves were domesticated more than once and/or that people befriended canines at different times in different places, and that this phenomenon does not have a single geographical source. On the other hand, some experts strongly believe, based on genetic analysis, that there has only been one main domestication event since the Stone Age. It's evident that humans once feared wolves, making the dynamics of how dogs became man's best friend even more mysterious and intriguing. Bonn Oberkassel dog. In 1914 in Oberkassel, a suburb of Bonn, Germany, workers discovered a grave containing the remains of a man, woman, and dog dating back to around 14,000 years ago, during the Paleolithic era. While all signs pointed toward the dog being a family pet, researchers could only speculate about this until relatively recently. A 2018 study by veterinarian and archaeologist Luke Janssens revealed that the dog was not only domesticated, but that he was very well taken care of. Based on a dental examination, Janssens concluded that the poor pup passed away at around 28 weeks old after several bouts with serious illnesses, including canine distemper, which the animal contracted at around 19 weeks old. Distemper is a serious illness that progressively worsens, with symptoms like fever, dehydration, not eating, diarrhea, vomiting, and seizures. The Bonn Oberkassel dog only lived for another 9 weeks after contracting it, thanks to their watchful human guardians. It probably only could have survived thanks to intensive and long-lasting human care and nursing, they said. The pup's caretakers probably performed duties he would not have been able to carry out on his own, like keeping warm and providing food and water. This meticulous care indicates that by the time the Bonn Oberkassel dog passed away, the relationship between humans and canines had the capacity to surpass us simply using these animals for work purposes, and that at least some people regarded them as close companions and part of the family. After all, a sick dog was arguably of no use to humans from a working standpoint, suggesting that the family who took care of the pup was motivated by compassion or an emotional bond. According to Janssen and Gyre, this is the earliest known example of people treating dogs as pets, in other words, for friendship rather than utilitarian purposes. Dogor. Officially speaking, the Bonn Oberkassel dog constitutes the world's oldest known domesticated dog remains. Competition for this title came along during the summer of 2018, however, with the discovery of Dogor, a puppy who sat frozen in the Siberian permafrost for around 18,000 years. Dogor, whose name means friend in the Yakut language, was found near the Indigirka River in Russia's Sakha Republic, also known as Yakutia. The pup is remarkably well preserved, offering scientists a first-hand glance at what canines in the area looked like at the time. Researchers believe he passed away at around 2 months old, as he still had his milk teeth, but the cause of death is unknown. Using a piece of the dog's rib bone, experts from the Center for Paleogenetics in Sweden sequenced the animal's DNA. They determined that Dogor was male, but they could not figure out whether he was a dog or a wolf, even after 2 rounds of testing. It's normally relatively easy to tell the difference between the two, research fellow David Stanton told CNN. The fact that we can't might suggest that it's from a population that was ancestral to both, to dogs and wolves. This means Dogor may have been an early dog, an early wolf, or a predecessor to both. Interestingly, he comes from a time when ancient wolves were dying out and dogs were first emerging. As you go back in time, as you get closer to the point that dogs and wolves converge, it becomes harder to tell between the two, Stanton told the Washington Post. While experts are still trying to understand just how dogs became dogs, this interesting find provides a telling clue that may eventually help solve this puzzle. Scientists plan to perform more tests on Dogor's DNA in an effort to definitively place him on the canine family tree. The coaster dogs. Modern dogs are unrelated to the first known domesticated dogs in the Americas and their relatives, which, according to 19th century explorers, greatly resembled wolves and howled instead of barked. Archaeologists unearthed the remains of some of these dogs in Coaster, Illinois during the 1960s and 70s at 2 known sites near where hunter-gatherers once stalked deer and collected shellfish. The canines appeared to be buried deliberately in individual grave-like pits, and their bones showed no evidence of being cut or deliberately harmed in any other way at human hands. The fact that they were so close shows that they were friendly and bonded closely with people. In recent years, researchers performed genetic analysis and radiocarbon dating on the bones, which revealed that the dogs lived around 10,000 years ago, making them the oldest known dogs in the Americas. The largest of these ancient canines, whose DNA is completely absent from the genomes of today's domestic dogs, was the size of an Irish setter, while the rest were smaller and more slender. Zoo archaeologist Angela Perri said it wouldn't be surprising if they were all used as hunting dogs. By discovering that the genetic signature of these canines is unlike that of any living dogs, scientists got one step closer to untangling the mystery of where today's domesticated dogs come from via the process of elimination. European dogs in North America. A 2018 study helped further unravel the confusing evolutionary history of dogs in North America when it found that the European canines who were brought to the continent during the 16th century likely replaced the ancient dogs that were already there. The research team analyzed the genomes of ancient North American and Siberian dog remains, including one of the coaster dogs from Illinois. Then the team compared that information to the genetic material of 5,000 modern dogs, including breeds that are thought to be of ancient American lineage. The results showed that prior to European contact, dogs in North America shared a common Siberian ancestor, but that their genetics were distinct from any other dogs throughout the world. At some point after the arrival of Europeans, these creatures vanished. Out of the 5,000 dogs the team tested, only 5 of them showed evidence of past interbreeding with these ancient canines. Included among them were a Chihuahua and a mixed breed dog who possessed less than 2% of the ancient American DNA, and 3 Carolina dogs, one of which had up to 33%. Interestingly, another Carolina dog had no ancient DNA. Everything that people think of as kind of these classic American dogs are all Eurasian dogs, zoo archaeologist Angela Perri told National Geographic, adding that it's unknown what these dogs looked like. Why these ancient dogs disappeared is also unknown, but there are several possibilities, including that the European dogs brought over diseases that American canines had no immunity or resistance to, and that European settlers probably preferred their breeds of dogs over the ones that were already in North America when they arrived. America's first dogs. Understanding how ancient American dogs were wiped off the face of the planet doesn't help to explain where they came from in the first place, but researchers look to the same place to solve both mysteries: their genetics. As I mentioned before, all signs point toward these dogs sharing a common Siberian ancestor. The genetic code of the coaster dogs and the remains of around 50 other ancient canines bear strong evidence of this, and this information is also helping researchers learn more about the history of human migration to North America. To get here, people crossed the Bering Land Bridge, which connected Siberia to Alaska when sea levels were lower, until around 14,500 years ago. The Bering Strait, as we know it today, did not yet exist, and the space between western Siberia and eastern Alaska, known as Beringia, was filled with land. These findings, which strongly suggest that the first domesticated dogs in North America were brought there by the people who crossed over the Bering Land Bridge, fly in the face of the long-held theory that the first companion dogs in America were tamed gray wolves. The remains of some of these dogs have marks on their shoulders, indicating that in addition to friendship, people also use them for work, such as pulling supply carts and sleds. Evidence also shows that while the first people to cross the Bering Land Bridge probably did not bring dogs with them, the first canines in North America managed to arrive before Beringia became submerged around 11,000 years ago. Inuit dogs. As if the dog's evolutionary history in North America alone wasn't confusing enough, there's more! The Canadian Eskimo dog and the Greenland dog, which are genetically identical, represent a breed of working dog used by Inuits, and which is currently threatened with extinction, with the estimated remaining purebred population numbering 300 or less. This dog breed, which is genetically distinct from the ancient canines who traveled to North America via the Bering Land Bridge over 11,000 years ago, descends from dogs that an indigenous tribe called the Tula people brought to the Arctic from Siberia around 1,000 years ago. It wasn't until 2015 that researchers definitively determined that the Greenland dog and the Canadian Inuit dog are the same breed. They're different from Siberian Huskies, Alaskan Huskies, and Alaskan Malamutes, and their mitochondrial DNA sequence, which suggests that the Greenland and Canadian Inuit dogs share a common female ancestor, is absent from the genetic footprint of other modern dogs. Curiously, the closest known DNA to this breed was detected in the 1,000-year-old remains of a dog discovered in Florida. This is odd, as these dogs are typically only found north of the Arctic Circle, but this could be just another clue to unraveling the dog's messy and confusing genetic history. Moreover, the research on this breed is controversial and inconclusive, and future findings could even prove that what we think we know about Inuit dogs is flawed. After all, it wouldn't be the first time we got our facts wrong about the canine family tree. Dinosaur eggs. This amazing archaeological discovery may feel a little familiar to anyone who's watched a certain movie about a certain park where certain extinct animals are brought back to life. In the Guangdong province of southern China in the summer of 2019, a curious young boy named Zhang Yangxi was trying to crack open a walnut near the bank of the Dong River. Accompanied by his mother, the lucky dinosaur-loving kid stumbled upon a rather curious stone. But this wasn't just any stone. This was a 66-million-year-old dinosaur egg, and it wasn't alone. His mother notified the police, who called in specialists. In the days that followed, as scientists flocked to the scene of the young boy's discovery, there would ultimately be 43 prehistoric dinosaur eggs unearthed. It was a big dinosaur nest. And while you may have visions of Godzilla laying eggs along the riverbanks of China or a mad scientist extracting fossilized embryos to build a park, you really have nothing to worry about. We are still a long way off from that kind of technology, if ever. Since the incident, the Guangdong province has exploded with dinosaur finds and even more fossilized eggs. Dating back to the Cretaceous period, the prehistoric eggs were taken to the Heiyuan Dinosaur Museum to see what species they are. Spanish flu victims. This find is kind of scary. 22 years ago, a multinational research team went out to look for victims of the Spanish influenza of 1918 that killed an estimated 40 million people. Found frozen in ice in the Norwegian Arctic, 6 bodies were discovered by the team, who were actually out searching for them. It must have been some lead, because they actually found what they were looking for: influenza frozen in ice. Over 20 years ago, scientists were already worried about the potential danger of a highly infectious virus that attacked the lungs, and here we are. These frozen men in the Arctic yielded fragments of the virus in the brain and in organs of those who had died on Svalbard, an island 800 miles from the North Pole. At first, it was believed that the bodies were so far gone that they were worthless. The tissue samples proved otherwise, in a good way. There were fragments of the flu's genetic material, the RNA, from the lung, kidney, liver, and brain. So why is this good news exactly? For so long, no one knew the cause of the 1918 flu, and scientists have had trouble understanding where it came from and why this virus was so lethal. Flu is a constantly mutating virus, but researchers have always feared a similar flu could occur. Because the 1918 flu vanished decades before science could analyze viruses in the laboratory, no available data would help researchers recognize an equally lethal virus, which is why we are having so much trouble right now with COVID-19. The Baltimore Sun published an article in 1999 and predicted the re-emergence of a killer flu could be a global catastrophe. Finding these infected victims in ice may hold extremely valuable information for us. We'll just have to continue to wait and see. The sunken palace of Cleopatra. Cleopatra is undoubtedly the most famous female ruler of ancient times. Even today, 2,000 years after Cleopatra ruled as the last queen of Egypt, she is still recognized the world over as a symbol of power, beauty, and feminine lust. Known for her affairs with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, Cleopatra once ruled from a marvelous palace of marble and treasures, but roughly 1,400 years ago, that palace sunk. It wasn't until 1998 that a French archaeologist rediscovered Cleopatra's sunken palace near the Bay of Alexandria, the world's most renowned ancient capital and the center of civilization thousands of years ago. Cleopatra's palace was believed to have resided on the island Antirrhodos, which was utterly decimated by an earthquake and a massive tsunami that struck Egypt in the 5th century, resulting in the infamous Queen's Palace sinking to the bottom of the sea. Hundreds upon hundreds of treasures have been uncovered since 1998, including huge sphinxes, an immense palace complex, and even what is believed to be a giant stone bust of Cleopatra's son with Julius Caesar, Caesarion. The palace is so grand that attempts are being made to create an underwater museum to give tourists a close-up look at history. Sign me up for that tour. That sounds amazing. And now for number 7. But first, it's shout-out time. Big shout-out to Vinny S. and Axel X Fjord. That's what I'm here for, entertainment and stress relief. Thanks so much for the support. If you are new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join us. The sacrificial horses of Duke Jing of Qi. Duke Jing of Qi was a powerful Chinese ruler in the 6th century BC, and while the story of Duke Jing's life is rich with enough murder, treachery, and power to be an HBO drama series, the story of his burial is equally interesting. Duke Jing's tomb was uncovered in 1964 in the Shandong province of China. What archaeologists found buried in the dirt was nothing short of fantastic. It seemed Duke Jing was passionate about horses and wanted to take his own army with him to the afterlife. An unbelievable 600 horses are believed to have been sacrificed along with him and laid inside their own sacrificial pit. Archaeologists first found the remains of 145 horses in a pit measuring 215 meters long, then another 106 horse skeletons some years later. The horses are believed to have been between 5 and 7 years old. But the good news, if you could call it that, is that scientists believe the horses were given alcohol until they were unconscious, and then they were hit on the head. Sort of humane, especially for the 6th century BC, I guess. In 2003, excavations were halted due to lack of preparation, but based on the evidence, there are likely 600 horses or more lost beneath the dirt inside Duke Jing's burial grounds. Other animals, such as pigs and dogs, were also sacrificed in his honor. One may argue that Duke Jing loved animals and was the Dr. Dolittle of ancient China. Finally, after a 16-year pause, excavations at the tomb resumed, and there is now a museum at the site. According to historical records, Duke Jing loved his horses, and this large scale of sacrifice, along with thousands of other valuable items, shows just how honored and respected he was. Giant dinosaur thigh. In 2019, French archaeologists discovered one of the largest intact fossils ever unearthed. The thigh bone they found measures an incredible 6.6 feet in length, and the bone is only a femur. Let that sink in for a minute. A femur bone taller than most basketball players. Pretty incredible. The paleontologists at the scene figured the bone had belonged to a sauropod from the late Jurassic period, around 140 million years ago. It makes you wonder how big the dinosaur was, right? As the largest land animals that ever existed, they weighed around 40 to 50 tons. To put that into perspective, your average African elephant weighs around 6 to 7 tons. That means that we are dealing with a dinosaur almost 7 times larger than an elephant. That is one big footprint, too. Even more impressive than the size of the bone is how well preserved the fossil was when they found it. You can see the marks of muscles, tendons, and scars. It literally looks like an oversized dog chew toy, only it weighs 1,100 pounds. This isn't even actually the biggest bone found at the site of Amenemhat, France. In 2010, scientists uncovered a thigh bone that was 7.2 feet long and weighed about the same as this one. Since then, there have been over 7,500 fossils from over 40 different species found near Cognac in France, in the same area as this giant bone was unearthed. Who's up for a field trip when all this lockdown stuff is over? We can enforce social distancing at a dinosaur dig. Black Pyramid of Amenemhat III. Amenemhat III, who ruled during ancient Egypt's Middle Kingdom, built the Black Pyramid of Dashur in the beginning of his reign. Located in Hawara, Amenemhat III was the last king of the 12th dynasty. The structure is called the Black Pyramid because of its heavily deteriorated state. Its core is made from a dark, unfired mud brick, and it lacks the stabilizing stone framework customary of other pyramids. The pyramid's limestone outer layer was removed long ago by robbers, leaving behind the dark inner core, which is oddly shaped due to the effects of weathering. The ancient Egyptians called the structure Amenemhat is mighty and perfect. Ironically, shortly after the pyramid was built, it started crumbling, and it became clear that Amenemhat had made numerous mistakes, including foundations built on unstable ground, building near water, and barely above sea level, which made the pyramid prone to flooding, too many chambers and corridors at the base, making the structure weak, and too few stress-relieving structures throughout these chambers and corridors to support the weight above them. Yikes. It was like a practice pyramid. By the time the builders were nearing the final stages of construction, some parts of the ceiling had sunk by as much as 2 inches. The project was ultimately abandoned in a partially finished state 15 years into Amenemhat's reign, when he decided to build a stabler pyramid elsewhere, although some experts believe that he and several of his wives were originally laid to rest in the Black Pyramid. At the top of all pyramids is the capstone, also called the pyramidion. Made from diorite, granite, or limestone, it was then covered in gold or electrum. Very few have survived into modern times, and most that have are made of polished black granite. 4 are housed in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, including the one from the Black Pyramid of Amenemhat III. Peruvian Pet Cemetery. You may have read the classic Stephen King novel Pet Sematary or seen the film adaptation, but don't worry, this archaeological find is nothing like that. There are no supernatural regenerative properties here that I know of. I haven't been in person. In fact, the pet cemetery uncovered by a Peruvian anthropologist near Lima goes to show how much the ancient Chiribaya people revered their pets. Since 1993, over 82 doggy tombs have been uncovered in the area. Amazing, right? Even more amazing is that the Chiribaya people who predate the Incas buried their beloved pets with blankets and treats. Surely a gracious farewell meant to keep the dogs happy in the afterlife. Anthropologist Sonia Guillen said the dogs were thanked and recognized for their social and familial contribution. They were not sacrificed. The pre-Columbian people seriously valued their canine companions that would help them herd llamas and take care of farms. The Chiribaya people lived from 900 to 1350 AD, and in all of the cemeteries, in between human tombs are others just for dogs, both old and young. Interestingly enough, many scientific researchers are claiming that the mummified dogs were actually the original breed in South America, first brought across the Bering Strait during the last ice age. As we've been learning, it looks like dogs have been our best friend for longer than we thought. Woolly mammoth. If you are out digging, what's the last thing you would expect to find? An ancient burial chamber? A long-lost relic? How about a 15,000-year-old woolly mammoth skull? One of the most amazing things ever found by accident has to be this. Soybean farmer James Bristle and a friend were doing some major digging to put in a natural gas line. They came upon what they thought was a fence post. As they dug it out of the dirt, they realized it was something else entirely. It was a pelvis from an ancient woolly mammoth dating back to about 15,000 years ago. Then they found the skull. It was huge. The tusks were miraculously still attached when it was lifted by machines out of the dirt. While over 30 woolly mammoth skeletons have been found in Michigan, where James Bristle's soybean field is, none have ever been so completely intact. Paleontologists from the University of Michigan who came to excavate the skeleton said that the mammoth was most likely hunted and butchered by humans for dinner, and then stored the rest of it so they could come back for it later. There were 3 boulders found near it that may have been used to anchor the carcass in a pond. It gives amazing insight into what life was like for humans and mammoths. Along with the 30 mammoths found in Michigan, there have been 300 mastodons. Both are ancient relatives of the modern-day elephant. But nothing is as cool as finding a mammoth skull literally buried underneath your property. Except, I don't know, maybe a T-Rex skull? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Indonesian hobbits. Archaeologists from Indonesia and Australia were on the island of Flores in 2003 in Indonesia, searching for proof of human migration from the Asian continent to the continent of Australia. And they discovered something new, an ancient species of human. The archaeologists uncovered the skeleton of a woman inside a cave that was unlike anything previously discovered. She was of such a small stature that she could have been mythical. This was a very small species, a trait that is thought to have occurred because of island dwarfism, where the limited resources available to creatures that are isolated on islands causes different evolutionary effects. They were only about 3 foot 6 inches tall, had very small brains, no chins, receding foreheads, and very large feet. These estimates are based on the female skeleton that was found, but also suggest that they could weigh up to 66 pounds. It is certainly exciting to think of a whole band of hobbits living thousands of years ago in Indonesia, but the discovery of this species has raised more questions than it has answered for researchers. How did they live? Why did they die out? What we do know is the sad truth that hobbits still aren't real. It's disappointing, I know. They still only exist in Middle-earth. Otzi. When we think about mummies, especially ancient mummies, the first place that comes to mind is ancient Egypt. They are inarguably the masters of mummification. However, mummies have been found all over the planet, including in North America, like the world's smallest mummy in Guanajuato, central Mexico. But what about natural mummies, ones that were mummified without scooping their brains out of their noses? Meet Otzi, also known as the Iceman. He is the oldest known natural mummy. Otzi was discovered near the Similaun Mountains, which is near the border between Italy and Austria. He was found in 1991 by a pair of German mountaineers who mistook him for a perished tourist trapped in ice. However, Otzi turned out to be a 45-year-old man who had lived sometime between 3,400 BC and 3,100 BC. However, when he was found, his body weighed about 30 pounds. researchers discovered that he had eaten meat, red deer roots, fruit, and herb bread within 8 hours before he died. He suffered from several parasites, was lactose intolerant, and had over 60 tattoos. Something bad had happened to him as an arrowhead was found lodged in his left shoulder. There is now a memorial marking the exact place in which he was found. Giant freshwater stingray. Native to Southeast Asia, the giant freshwater stingray is one of the world's largest freshwater fish, reaching over 6 feet across, up to 16.5 feet long, and often weighing as much as 1,300 pounds. Pretty impressive. Even though these creatures are massive, they are not aggressive. However, they have been known to sometimes push and pull boats around and even drag them underwater. Sailors told the story of a creature so large it would be mistaken for an island. They would anchor their ships to it, and then the creature would dive, pulling the ship down with them. Fishermen today say that the stingray will pull their boat for miles and even pull them under. That's how strong they are. These rays can be dangerous if they want to be. After all, they have a 15-inch poisonous barb. This serrated stinger can easily pierce human skin and bone. The toxin causes an immediate painful stinging sensation, and if you get jabbed, it will most likely become infected. The best way to relieve the pain and swelling is to pour hot water over the wound as soon as possible, which breaks down some of the toxin. This bottom-dwelling species lives primarily in sandy and muddy areas of estuaries and rivers, occasionally bringing it into close contact with humans. In 2015, American TV nature conservationist Jeff Corwin spent 2 hours in Thailand's Mae Klong River catching the largest fish ever captured by rod and steel, an 800-pound giant freshwater stingray measuring 14 feet long and 8 feet wide. These impressive animals are endangered and are almost extinct in some places, including the Mekong River. King cobra. At up to 18 feet long, the king cobra is the world's longest venomous snake. It's also one of the most venomous snakes on the planet, period. Cobras are found throughout Africa, the Middle East, India, Southeast Asia, and Indonesia. People have been mesmerized by their elegance and dangerous bite for thousands of years. A single king cobra bite can cause cardiac arrest and respiratory failure. According to National Geographic, they can deliver enough neurotoxin to kill 20 people, or an adult elephant. When threatened or confronted, this terrifying giant will lift up to a third of its body off the ground, sometimes even bringing itself to eye level with its adversary. A snake will also flare out its hood and hiss at an opponent. Cobras have potent neurotoxic venom that attacks the nervous system, and people can stop breathing just 30 minutes after being bitten by a cobra. Fortunately, there is an anti-venom, but you have to be able to get to it in time. King cobras generally avoid humans whenever possible and are naturally shy, but nesting females will ferociously guard their nests and will occasionally attack without being provoked. Most of the people who get bitten work with snakes or have them as pets. Peruvian giant yellow-leg centipede. Did you know that most centipedes are venomous? Well, imagine one that can get to be about a foot long. The Peruvian giant yellow-leg centipede, also called the Amazonian giant centipede, is one of the largest species in the world. It's found in various regions throughout the Caribbean and South America, particularly the northern part of the continent, and generally dwells in tropical forests. This carnivorous giant will eat pretty much anything it can overpower, including large invertebrates like spiders, scorpions, and millipedes, and small vertebrates such as lizards, frogs, and snakes that are up to 10 inches long, birds, mice, and more. A 3-gram centipede can take out a 45-gram mouse. Large Peruvian giant yellow-leg centipedes are even capable of partially suspending themselves from ceilings to catch bats. Yes, they will eat bats if they can. Its powerful neurotoxic components can neutralize prey in a matter of seconds. This species is fast, aggressive, and will bite, no problem. Most people will suffer non-fatal effects from the venom, but those who are allergic are at a higher risk for adverse reactions. If you're unsure whether or not you're allergic to centipede venom, it's probably smart to simply avoid handling one. And now for number 8. But first, big shout out to Jose C for supporting this channel. I really appreciate your nice comments. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe and join us, and let me know your favorite venomous creature in the comments below. Nomura's jellyfish. Nomura's jellyfish are typically found in the waters between China and Japan, mainly the Yellow Sea and East China Sea. They grow up to 6.5 feet in diameter and weigh as much as 440 pounds, with some record specimens even reaching 485 pounds. A big problem is the species' tendency to proliferate along Japanese shores. In 1958, 1995, and in recent years, a sudden abundance of jellyfish at a density of up to 100 times higher than normal was reported. Once the Nomura's jellyfish becomes a problem, it's very difficult to get rid of because when it's alarmed, the creature rapidly reproduces. In Japan, there is an official committee dedicated specifically to combating the species. Last year, South Korea also issued a warning about Nomura's jellyfish taking over its beaches, particularly near major cities like Busan and Ulsan. Population increases of this species in areas where it's unwelcome are attributed to factors like climate change, as well as increased phosphorus and nitrogen in the waters, making them ideal for breeding. Stings from this giant are very painful, but luckily rarely fatal. Still not great if you actually want to go swimming at the beach. Not really worth the risk or the pain. Platypus. There are very few venomous mammals left in the world. One of them is the platypus, an egg-laying cutie endemic to eastern Australia. At just 5 pounds on average, it's not huge, but it's the biggest among the planet's remaining venomous mammals. Males possess a sharp venomous spur on both of their hind feet. This venom shares some of the same properties with reptile venom, but it evolved separately. Researchers are slightly perplexed about why the platypus, a docile creature with very few natural predators, needs venom. They theorize that males use the spur offensively while competing over mates, which would explain why they produce the most venom during the spring, which is also breeding season. Even though they are cute with their thick fur, duck-like bill, and webbed feet, don't pet the platypus. Its venom is said to be very painful, but don't worry, if you do get gouged, you won't die. No known human fatalities have occurred from platypus venom, but it is known to occasionally kill dogs. People can expect symptoms like extreme pain, which can last for weeks, as well as swelling at the wound site. The pain lasts a very long time, and not even morphine would work against it. Doctors have to inject local anesthesia to make it stop. Scientists believe that learning more about the pain response that platypus venom triggers in humans can help them develop new pain medications and antibiotics. South American Bushmaster. The South American Bushmaster is the largest modern viper species. It dwells in the tropical and humid forests of Central and South America. Bushmasters are often more than 6.5 feet long and can reach up to 11.5 feet long. They are the world's second longest venomous snake and the longest such species in the Americas, as well as the world's longest pit viper. This snake's bite can be fatal to humans. Its venom attacks the circulatory system and has an anticoagulative effect, meaning that the blood loses its ability to clot. Other bite symptoms include hypotension or low blood pressure and decreased heart rate. It's imperative for victims to receive emergency medical treatment for bites. People can get accidentally bitten by a bushmaster by unintentionally disturbing the animals. These snakes are known to stalk humans for several meters and to sometimes follow up with an attack. For this reason, members of the medical community have proposed an urgent need to develop more effective antivenoms than anything that's currently available. I never want to experience a snake chasing me. No thanks! Lion's mane jellyfish. The largest known jellyfish species is the lion's mane jellyfish, which can be found in the cooler waters of the Pacific, Atlantic, and North Sea regions, including the Arctic Ocean. It reaches up to 6.5 feet long and has up to 1,200 tentacles, each measuring up to 120 feet long. The lion's mane jellyfish hunts by using its tentacles to capture fish, other jellyfish, and small crustaceans. It has a powerful sting that is excruciatingly painful for humans. Generally, it is not fatal, but it will hurt quite a bit. There is a story that in New England, one lion's mane jellyfish stung 40 people swimming at the beach, possibly because it was so large. Those who are allergic to its poison risk a deadly anaphylactic reaction, and people in poor health could suffer from a heart attack. Gila monster. Native to the southwestern United States and the northwestern Mexican state of Sonora, the Gila monster is a heavy venomous lizard that grows up to 2 feet long. It's one of just 2 known venomous lizard species in North America and is the largest lizard species north of the Mexican border. Getting bitten by a Gila monster is said to be incredibly painful. The lizard will clamp down with its strong jaws and hold on for dear life for up to 15 minutes. As it's biting down, it draws venom from its glands in its jaw and will gnaw so the venom enters the open wound. Symptoms from the venom include swelling, nausea, vomiting, chills, fever, and breathing difficulties, just to name a few. The Gila monster has been around for a long time. It hails from the genus Heloderma, which has existed since the Miocene epoch, and evidence of the species itself dating back to the late Pleistocene, between 10,000 and 8,000 years ago, has been found near Las Vegas, Nevada. Like other members of its genus, the Gila monster has remained relatively unchanged over time, earning it the reputation of a living fossil. Due to its sluggish speed and the fact that they spent 95% of their lives hidden, this creature is generally not a threat to humans. Their venom inspired a drug to help treat people with type 2 diabetes. Vietnamese centipede. The Vietnamese centipede hails from the same genus as the Peruvian giant yellow leg centipede. It's one of the world's largest centipedes and, like its relative, uses its fast-acting venom to kill and devour prey, including insects, spiders, mice, and reptiles. Humans have died from Vietnamese centipede bites, according to the Hawaii Journal of Medicine and Public Health, but usually the effects are limited to reddening and extreme pain at the site. In early 2018, a Hawaii resident named Clayton Cambra, who's always been fascinated by ugly creatures, found a 14.5-inch specimen in the woods behind his home. He captured the massive arthropod, but not without some struggle. He stood up in the 5-gallon bucket like a cobra, Cambra told the Hawaii Tribune-Herald. He crawled out of that bucket 4 or 5 times before I got him here. Eventually, Cambra managed to get the centipede into a plastic bag and placed it in his freezer. Then he thawed it out, injected it with formaldehyde, and put its remains on display in a case inside his house. The specimen measured much longer than the 10-inch world record holder at the time. It still has not been confirmed by the Guinness World Records yet. Vietnamese centipedes are endemic to Eastern Asia and is one of 3 introduced species present in Hawaii. Laeophis crotalloides. Laeophis crotalloides was the largest venomous snake ever discovered. It slithered around what is now Greece 4 million years ago. It grew between 10 and 13 feet long and weighed as much as 57 pounds. The species wasn't as long as today's biggest venomous snakes, which reach around 18 to 20 feet, but with a typical king cobra weighing just 15 to 20 pounds, it was much heavier. It lived in grasslands with cool winters rather than the tropics where most modern large reptiles live. Paleobiologist Benjamin Kier said we've got something that, for its latitudinal placement and the climate reconstruction, is massively out of proportion. Paleontologist Sir Richard Owen first discovered fossilized evidence of Laeophis crotalloides in Thessaloniki, Greece in 1857, in the form of 13 large vertebrae. Unfortunately, the bones were lost, and further evidence of the species did not turn up again until 2014, when a single vertebrae was discovered near Thessaloniki. Luckily, the bone made it easy for experts to gauge the snake's overall size. It's the largest and heaviest viper ever found, superseding modern record holders. Researchers are baffled at how this viper maintained the necessary metabolism for reaching its massive size in a cooling climate, and they admittedly know little about its behavior and lifestyle, given the single vertebrae they have to go off of. Komodo dragon. Also called the Komodo monitor, the Komodo dragon is the world's heaviest lizard. It reaches up to 10 feet long and can weigh over 300 pounds. Found only among Indonesia's Lesser Sunda Islands, this gigantic reptile has been around for millions of years, thriving in the harsh climate of the island's tropical forests and other habitats. This species is one of few lizards in the world that has a venomous bite, and it's a powerful and stealthy hunter with a strong sense of smell that will spend hours stalking its prey. It will eat pretty much any kind of meat, from small rodents to deer to huge water buffalo. For years, everyone thought that the Komodo dragon used a deadly bacteria it had in its mouth as venom. But in 2009, biochemist and molecular biologist Brian Fry from the University of Queensland in Australia put a Komodo dragon into a medical scanner and discovered that the species has toxin-packed venom glands, like the Gila monster. These toxins cause massive bleeding, lower blood pressure, induce shock, and prevent clotting. Fry told National Geographic in 2013 that he suspects Komodo dragons kill prey using a grip, rip, and drip method, biting down with their sharp, serrated teeth, causing large wounds. The venom takes over from there, accelerating blood loss and sending the prey into shock. And while some researchers found evidence challenging the theory that the Komodo dragon uses bacteria as venom, others detected 54 disease-causing pathogens in the animal's saliva. But Fry and several other experts stand by their belief that the bacteria venom theory is baseless. Komodo dragons occasionally attack humans, and these attacks are sometimes fatal. A deadly attack in 2007 was the first in 33 years, but several others have unfortunately happened since then. The Caesarea treasure. In February of 2015, a diver was swimming in the waters off the coast of the Israeli port town of Caesarea when he noticed something glimmering in the sand below. At first, thinking it was a piece of trash that had been stirred up in the storm the night before, he swam down to retrieve it. But this was no piece of foil. It was a gold coin with Arabic script written on both sides. He found more and more coins and called the authorities to declare the find. The region isn't known for its archaeological remains, so there was some skepticism at first, but further dives went on to retrieve more than 2,000 of the coins, all of which were 24-karat gold with more than 95% purity. The amazing thing is that they were in near perfect condition despite having been there for more than 1,000 years. The find has revealed a huge amount about the civilization that lived there while Caesarea was a part of the Islamic Fatimid Dynasty. The coins were made between the year 996 and 1036 during the reigns of Caliphs al-Hakim and his son al-Zahir, and had come from as far as Cairo in Egypt and Palermo in Sicily. It's proof of a wealthy and trade-reliant empire, with Caesarea being an important hub in the network. Each of the coins would have been the equivalent to a month's salary for a soldier, which means the haul would have been enough to pay an army of 2,000 for a month. Unsurprisingly, divers and researchers are now searching the site to see if there's anything else in the sand that was lost in the same way. Maybe the storms will stir up something else. Caged dugong. Divers heading out to explore never know what they might find. These divers were in for a shock when they went out to investigate the beautiful waters of Indonesia. However, instead of enjoying sea life in its natural habitat, they were appalled to find a set of cages below the water. Someone was keeping 2 dugongs captive, a mother chained by her tail in one cage and her calf in the other. She was floating limply around, and no one knows how long they had been kept in the cages, but diver Dylan Lim said it looked like they had been locked up for weeks and told the dodo that the ropes are worn and torn. The scars and the wound on her tail are so deep. It was very heartbreaking. Dugongs are closely related to manatees and are enormous and friendly vegetarians. National Geographic reports they are easy targets for hunters and were long hunted for their meat, oil, bones, and teeth. Dugongs are already threatened by coastal development and the loss of seagrass beds. Apparently, local fishermen had captured them and decided to charge money to take a look at the dugongs, making some sort of tragic makeshift tourist attraction. The divers reported that the fishermen asked if they wanted to see them and take pictures for a fee. Remarkably, when the divers asked the dugongs' captors to release them, the fishermen agreed, but just to make sure, these divers shared their video of the incident online. Social media alerted the authorities to the nightmarish condition of these animals, and the next day they were released by officials. It was a positive end to a pretty depressing story. Sorry guys. Pyrosome. Pyrosomes are a kind of tunicate or sea squirt that float freely in the ocean. They are made out of thousands of little clones called zooids and can grow up to 60 feet long, although they are hollow on the inside. Every clone is an animal unto itself and could live independently of the larger organism if given the chance, although each contributes to the larger entity's life sustenance. Technically, each one even has a spine. If split apart, they will continue to grow as independent entities. These humongous worm-like things creep some people out, but they actually emit a soft glow and can turn all sorts of colors with their bioluminescence. In fact, that's where they get their name from, pyro, which means fire, and soma, which means body. They can produce a strong glow for quite some time. They are very rare, but divers describe them as soft and delicate, while others report that they are tough, and they have actually seen them swallow a penguin. Since they are hollow, it seems like the penguin got stuck and then drowned. And now for number 8, but first I want to say a big thank you to all of our subscribers. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell to join the Origins Explained family. Elongated skulls. Cenotes are sinkholes where the ceiling has collapsed to reveal a diving or swimming hole. Now they are well-known tourist attractions, but they were sacred to the Maya, who had a very mysterious and complex relationship with them. These sinkholes provided fresh water to the inhabitants, but some were believed to be portals to the dark and scary underworld. Sac Uayum is a cenote in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, and locals have a healthy respect for it. Recently, underwater archaeologists even discovered a lot of human remains with elongated skulls. These human skulls were most likely flattened at birth as part of the traditional head-binding process. Local legend says that this cenote is protected by a feathered snake with the head of a horse. That seems pretty mythical, but it's nothing compared to the reality of the situation. Archaeologist and diver Bradley Russell uncovered 15 skulls between 2 chambers, and more are being uncovered. Before they began, a shaman performed a ceremony to ask the gods permission for a safe entry. It seems like something terrible happened in this place, and the stories have been passed down from generation to generation. The remains were not believed to be sacrificed. Some have suggested that they were victims of the plague, or maybe that they were buried there for religious reasons. Whatever the actual story, it is definitely a spooky place for talented divers. Ancient Sin City. The long-lost Roman city of Bahia used to be a partying hub. Indeed, some have called it the Las Vegas of Rome. Alas, all that is left of Bahia are its remains. But that doesn't make these remains any less jarring. In fact, divers have been able to explore these remains deep below the ocean's waters themselves. Throughout its history, Bahia was a destination frequented among the Roman elite class. Some of the biggest names in Roman history had vacation homes there, such as Cicero, Nero, and even Caesar. The foundation of the city sat atop volcanic vents, and relaxing hot springs peppered its entire landscape. But after being sacked by Muslim forces in the 8th century, Bahia was totally abandoned by the 1500s. Then, because of that same volcanic activity, the waters rose above its structures and engulfed them in water. But since sinking into the sea, Bahia has become a revered underwater archaeological hub. There, divers have spotted flashes of what life must have been like for its inhabitants. You can find saunas, rotundas, ornate columns, and sculptures and more, barely 18 feet under the water's surface. In fact, you can team up with local divers or go check these remains out for yourself in a glass-bottomed boat. You might see the statues of Ulysses or Octavia Claudius, Emperor Claudius's sister, if you're lucky. A bomb. If there's one thing in the world that you'd hope never gets lost, it's a nuclear bomb. But there have been occasions when this has happened. In February of 1950, a B-36 bomber was flying a training mission over the Pacific when 3 of its engines caught on fire, forcing the crew to abandon it. Following procedure, they jettisoned the bomb beforehand so it wouldn't be with the wreckage when the plane crashed into the mountains in northern British Columbia. For 60 years, the whereabouts of the bomb was unknown, until a diver working on an archipelago to the west of British Columbia found what he thought to be a UFO, but it turned out to be the 12-foot-long bomb. He had found the remains of the first known broken arrow, the term given to accidents involving American nuclear weapons. Fortunately for him, there was no danger for swimming so close to it because as part of a training mission, the bomb was a dummy, containing lead instead of plutonium. It was just his lucky day. Baltic Sea anomaly. In the summer of 2011, Swedish divers searching for treasure as part of the Ocean X team were quite surprised when they encountered a mysterious object at the bottom of the Baltic Sea. The sonar image that they took of the object is blurry, but evocative. It depicts a circular formation about 200 feet in diameter, which appears to include various ramps and staircases, structures that seem unlikely to have been formed naturally. Peter Lindberg, leader of the Ocean X team responsible for the discovery, said that the anomaly could possibly be natural, but Swedish tabloids reported an expert saying that it was probably formed prior to the Ice Age. Plus, it's hard to avoid the fact that it looks like a UFO, or the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. They said there was a flat-looking runway leading up to the object. The team reported their cameras and satellite phones refused to work while directly above the object, and then about 200 meters away, they started working again. However, as it turns out, none of the experts actually think that the object is an alien spaceship. It made a great mysterious story and got a lot of attention for Ocean X. The real story is that nature can create many wonderful and unique things. The Baltic Sea is a glacial basin, which is an area carved through by glaciers many years ago. So these experts think that the anomaly is just a glacial deposit, an odd rock transported to a different spot by glacial activity. That would explain the strange shape and the so-called runway. Live Science asked the team to comment on this glacial deposit theory, but they did not respond. Animal bones. Divers and scientists hit the jackpot when they found a treasure trove of prehistoric bones in an underwater cave in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. Bones don't preserve very well in tropical environments, so life in the late Pleistocene in Central America has many gaps. Paleontologists/divers went to Hoyo Negro, a submerged pit in the Sac Actun cave system. Among the pile of bones were of course several extinct species, including the skull of Arctotherium wingei, a 150-kilogram short-faced bear, and the bones of Protocyon Troglodytes, a carnivorous wolf-like animal. The animal bones were dated back to around 12,000 to 39,000 years ago. During that time, the land was dry and contained a deep pit that unsuspecting animals and humans could fall into. During and after the Ice Age, the pit was flooded and is now only accessible to divers, but these conditions have meant that the bones remain remarkably preserved. Other remains found belong to ground sloth species, tapirs, saber-toothed cats, cougars, bears, dogs, and huge elephant-like gomphotheres. It's full of all kinds of good stuff. Haunting sculpture. This creepy underwater sculpture is made to warn us of future eco-disasters. Made to be visited by divers, it is an underwater experience like no other. Located on the Atlantic seabed off the coast of Lanzarote in the Canary Islands, this spooky pile of humans is actually a work of art, found in the Museo Atlántico. It is an underwater sculpture garden and Europe's first underwater museum. Created by British naturalist and artist Jason DeCare Taylor, it sits 46 feet underwater and features 10 large installations containing over 300 sculptures. The museum acts as an inhabitable reef for marine species, and its contents are made with earth-friendly, pH-neutral materials that will disintegrate in a few hundred years. One of the exhibits, and perhaps the most famous, is Human Gyre, an assembly of over 200 life-size figurines depicting humans of all ages, arranged in a ring-shaped pile and seemingly dead or dying. This disturbing representation is intended as a warning against the potentially devastating effects of climate change on the world's human population. It also highlights the museum's overall theme regarding the preservation of the planet's fragile ecosystems. The museum said the artistic installation reminds us that we have evolved from marine life and are all subject to the movements and will of the ocean. Museo Atlántico is open to the public and viewable from glass-bottomed boats or by snorkeling or scuba diving, if you can handle it. Silfra Crack. The Silfra Crack is not just a crack in the sidewalk. Located in the Atlantic Rift, which forms the line that divides the European and American continents, the term crack is not figurative either. It is a giant rift in the Earth where the continental land masses meet. British scuba diver, marine biologist, and underwater photographer Alexander Mustard is one of the few people who can say they've touched two continents at the same time. He entered this Silfra Gap between the Eurasian and North American tectonic plates near Iceland. The plates are separating at a rate of about 1 inch per year, and Mustard has captured breathtaking images during his dives into the crevice. It is usually hard to spot the divide between these two continents because the rift is far below the surface. However, at Silfra, the crack is right there for everyone to see, in large part due to the fact that the water which melts off of Icelandic glaciers is clear. The water, which runs underground and is then filtered through lava rock, is so clear that you can drink it without any further filtering. Because of this, people from all over the world flock to Silfra to check out the continental divide. At certain spots, you can even touch both continents simultaneously, but the water is really cold, around 24 to 28 degrees Fahrenheit, and there are risks associated with swimming in the area. However, if you are feeling adventurous and bring your scuba gear, it cannot be missed. Hidden underwater river. As you've heard by now, there are a lot of incredible things in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. Among the many mysterious and beautiful cenotes, you should consider taking a peek at the cenote Angelita. It's one of the most mesmerizing dives in the entire world. The cenote Angelita is a deep scuba diving sinkhole which you can explore, but what sets it apart from the rest is its centerpiece. If you look around the cenote, you will find a river that seems to flow underwater. How does this occur? When the interior limestone at the bedrock of the cenote collapsed, it formed a pit which then filled up with both salt and groundwater. When the organic stuff decomposed, it created a mist of hydrogen sulfide called a halocline that divides the groundwater from the salt water. This mist strikingly looks like a flowing river. If you visit the cenote Angelita, you can go through the halocline yourself. The misty river effect doesn't stop there. Hidden in this river-like fog are leaves and branches, giving one the impression of swimming in a creepy forest. If you go do it yourself, be prepared for a surreal experience. Swimming through a deep-sea river, only to keep going further and further up or down, you are definitely in for a wild ride. There are many specialized tour companies that can take you on this diving experience. Thanks for watching! Do you ever go scuba diving? Would you like to visit any of these places? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button if you are new here. See you next time. Bye!